Well, I am very privileged today to be joined by Michael Tobin OBE, and he has been a guest on the podcast show many, many times. He's an ex-FTSE 250 CEO turned tech entrepreneur, and he's just written his third book, which is called A Perfect Storm. Fourth book. Have I not? Have I missed one of your books? I might have missed one. I'm very sorry about that. But there we go.
No, good.
So it's called A Perfect Storm and How to Thrive in an Uncertain and Ever-Changing World. So we're going to talk a bit about what's going on at the moment in technology, and I'm sure Mike will share some of his wisdom around that and his decades of experience in business and obviously in life. So yeah, thanks, Mike, again for joining me.
Pleasure.
Greatly
Pleasure, Nat.
appreciated.
Always good to see you.
Thank you.
Always good to see you.
Thank you. So, yeah, I mean, there's all this hype at the moment, isn't there, around disruption and around AI and around all these things. And I know so many people are just, they were blockchain experts last month, and now they're chat GPT experts trying to flog, something. So, what do you think about like the state of hype in AI and the world right now?
Look, in technology, we always tend to overestimate the uptake of technology, new technology, within a sort of a 5-year period, but we tend to underestimate it in a 20-year period, right? So, and part of that is because we have a linear thought bias, and we think in kind of straight lines, sort of 45-degree angle lines, and we think as things get more popular, they go. But actually, in reality, what happens with technology, especially this sort of stuff, which is collaborative, it kind of bumbles along with a lot of hype, doing nothing for quite a long time, and then suddenly explodes. So it kind of gets there, but over a different time span to what we tend to think about. And I mean, if you think about when the internet first came about, it was the devil, and all this sort of stuff, and it was an industry in itself. The internet was an industry. Now we don't think of the internet as an industry because the internet is pervasive in every industry. It's just part of everyday life. It's part of every business life. And so, then AI is the same, right? AI is the same. We'll be looking at AI as a separate beast over here for ages. And then suddenly, before you know it, it'll be there. And yes, it will consume jobs, as all technology does, but it'll create many others. But what I will say is that a business or a person in employment that is using AI is going to beat a person in employment that isn't using AI. Whether or not that person is replaced or not is a different thing. And so, look, it's going to do some amazing things. I'm also not that scared about it. I don't sort of see these scaremongers saying, it's the end of the world and end of civilization. When we invented nuclear capability, that you could have said the same thing, and who knows, it may well be at the end. But you can put a loaded gun on a table in front of 1,000 people, or have it there, people passing by, with it cocked and without the safety on. It'll be sitting there ready to fire and do whatever it does. And in 100 years' time, it will not have harmed a single person, because it's not the gun that does the bad; it's the people that do the bad, right? So the internet, AI, is just another weapon, and it can be used for good or bad.
Yeah. That's actually my attitude pretty much on that. I mean, there's all this scaremongering, isn't there, going on, which I'm kind of, I mean, I know we have to be cautious, but it's like, look, you can't pause this, because, we've got rogue states that will get ahead, right, of the capabilities that we've got in the West, and that worries me really. Yeah. But I think that from what I've gathered the last few months, I've been digging deep into this. I think the most important thing is really the ethical considerations of, the disruptive technologies and how they're going to affect people's lives. I mean, when I spoke to Monique Morrow about this, she sort of said, well, what if in 10 years or 15 years or even 50% of the population of the world don't have jobs? And that's an interesting thought to think about, right? Just to sort of get people to expand their minds.
Well, it is, and I know you can look at that good and bad. I mean, the UK is currently testing concepts around giving people kind of, I don't know, whatever it is, £2,000 a year or something, or some value just for having a pulse, right? So, it's kind of, in a way, we probably need to think about, how we live when we have more free time, right? And whether that's a day a week more, because, we're already sort of, since COVID, deciding whether we go in 4 days a week, 5 days a week, or less or more. And logically, there's no real reason why we'd ever need to go into the office, unless you're a bus driver or something, in which case it's kind of hard to do your bus driving from home. But I mean, if you're, like you and I, we work from home, we work for an office, it doesn't really matter, right? So the concept of going into work, is a historical concept, and work itself is not necessarily the right way to think about it, right? I haven't had a day job for years, but I'm still very active and very busy, and creating value and earning money and all those good things. So, I think the way we think about work probably changes as well. But you're right; it stimulates thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also encourages people to sharpen their skills. Right, at the end of the day, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the most important thing. Like, the future of work with all of this disruptive tech is like, well, people just need to, up their game, don't they? At the end of the day, and become better at what they're doing. And like you said a minute ago about, people who don't use AI versus the people that do, they're going to be disrupted, right? I mean, if they're actually in a job that needs that, because obviously there are still lots and lots of different jobs. I mean, I was reading something about teachers that they're going to need something like 75 million extra teachers or something by 2027 is what they were saying, which is fascinating, really.
Yeah, and I think if you use AI as an efficiency driver, right? So it doesn't replace a teacher; it makes teachers more efficient, right? It doesn't replace a lawyer per se, but imagine, we have in the UK the thing called case law, which is that, every case that comes up, the judge then applies any referenceable case that he's aware of in history that has an outcome. He will effectively base that same sort of outcome on the current case, or the same set of parameters on the current case. And now imagine if AI was there and he could do that for every single case in history, whether he knew about it or not, in any country, run by any judge. And suddenly you've got such a greater depth of knowledge. Oh, and by the way, you've got it in a millisecond. So that's the efficiency, right? Now, you can come on to think about, okay, well, do we actually even need that judge? Because if you got to that far, then why not have AI do the last bit too? And then that's where the ethical thing comes in. And people go, oh, no, because you need that human touch. Well, actually, that's kind of rubbish, right? Because human touch is simply, we're all a product of our history. We're all a product of our backgrounds, our environments, our experiences, our family, our friends, and all these things build up to make us allowing us to making us make a decision, given all that data and input and thing, right? So, well, that's what AI is, but it's just a richer base of experiences. So at some point, AI has empathy, right? So we're looking at AI as sort of robotic and saying, oh, well, they're just going to make a judgment call because they have no empathy. Well, let me give you a scenario. Two driverless cars. Oh, great idea, by the way. Driverless cars. We've been talking about that for how long now? Close to a decade.
But Elon Musk sold loads of Teslas because people thought they'd be driverless, right?
Yeah, exactly. We actually had driverless cars. We can't use them. So you think about this adoption curve, right? Everyone's panicking, but we've had available driverless cars in a Tesla for a decade. Well, I don't know how long, for best part of a decade at least, and yet we're still not seeing them around the streets, right? So this is the uptake. But at some point, in the next 20 years, driverless cars will be ubiquitous. But that's the point of overestimating within a sort of 5 to 7 year period and underestimating in a 20-year period. But let's just take, fast forward a little bit of time. You've got driverless cars, right? Two driverless cars going in different directions, coming up to each other. And, you've got two people sitting in the back reading the newspaper or, whatever they're doing. And then suddenly this old gentleman stands on the edge of the curb and slips and falls in the road. Now, if this was a human driver, we might be twiddling with the radio. We might be trying to turn around and see if shut the kids up from crying or shouting at each other or doing something. We may miss it. And even if we don't, we may not have the reaction time to do anything about it, and bang. And that's called an accident. Shame, but it's an accident. Now, what AI can do, sees that guy falling in the road, right? Goes, ha, I have instant reactions, and I'm not talking to the kids behind. I'm not twiddling with the radio. I'm fully focused, and I'm going to swerve to avoid that. And guess what? If I swerve to avoid that as a human being, I'll swerve straight into the car on the other side of the road. But I won't even react to that because I'm already impressed I've swerved to miss the guy. But now our driverless car can see the other car coming and go, I know his registration number. I'm going to chat to him quickly. So I say, I'm going to swerve right. Can you swerve left? And then that way we'll avoid each other as well, right? Absolutely impossible for human beings, right? Can't lean out the window. Oi, can you, not like that. So then you swerve, car swerves. But the other car goes, yeah, hang on a minute. I could do that. But have you seen there's a young lady pushing a pram with twins in it on the other side of the road? And if I swerve that way, I'm going to bash into them. Now, if you look at that old man, well, he's probably in his 80s, judging, right? That's our opinion. So he's got about 10 years left. Young lady in her 20s, and certainly by the look of the pram, 2 kids under 5, let's call that a combined 250 years of value. So I'm not going to swerve, I'm afraid. And this guy goes, yeah, I agree. I concur with that decision. I will just carry on and hit the guy. Now, carries on and hits the guy. It's no longer an accident because it was done intentionally. But is it the right thing? Right? And if we were human beings, even if all that way down that process, we had the split-second awareness and thoughtfulness to be able to calculate all of those things, would we still make that decision? Right? And why wouldn't we? We probably wouldn't, but why wouldn't we? We wouldn't because we would feel guilty hitting the guy. However, is it the right decision? Yes. For the combined value? Yes. Right? Now, let me add another complexity, right? So then the other guy, the other driverless car, the first one, he says, yeah, I've got all that calculation, yeah, and it's barely moved a meter in all this time, right? So all this conversation is going on, and it's less than a millisecond. So it's going, yeah, I get all that, and I understand that it's absolute logic for me to do that. But if you look at the facial recognition of that old man that's just fallen in, right? He's Professor blah-de-blah-de-blah, who's just, in my calculation, 3 months away from finding the cure for cancer, which will save tens of millions of lives a year. So let's go and smash into the lady with her twins, right? So again, what is right and what is wrong?
It's brutal.
So when you look at the decision-making process that's gone on there, right, it's entirely logical. Now, if you want to put clauses in that says, because basically the programming starts with us, but AI then auto-programs, right? And early on, we're building the base level. So effectively, we're giving birth to a child, but then the child is learning at the speed of light. So instead of it taking 15, 20 years for a child to become an adult and have all the hard knocks and all the experiences and trying things, getting them wrong and getting slapped for it, for being naughty and all those things, right? It's taking all of the experience of everything, right? That's ever gone on.
Right.
Instantly, right? And that's the experience of the products of good parents, the products of bad parents, evil people, good people, and it's taking everything it can find and becoming an adult on second 2 of its life, right? So it's making these decisions based on all of the calculus and criteria. Today, it's still subservient to our instructions. So if we say, don't kill the young lady with the pram, it will remove that as a concept right? And just hit the old man. But if we simply say, do the best for mankind, right, the lady with the pram is gone.
Well, that's yeah, I agree. It's just like some sort of massive ethical calculation that that it's very complicated. It's simple but complicated, right?
But so are humans. So are humans.
Yeah.
Because you imagine, right? So that, case next morning, sad accident, old man gets bumped off, or sad accident, swerves to miss car, noble effort to swerve to miss the oncoming traffic, wasn't his fault, killed some pedestrians. Compared to cars have a chat and consciously wipe this family out for the good of mankind. Tricky.
It's a big law case, isn't it? Just waiting to happen. I mean, I'm interested in also the way that they're using brainwaves, and they're actually scanning brainwaves for lie detector tests and stuff like this. And and I was chatting to someone about it the other day, like who's in that sort of field, neuroscience and stuff. Like, and it just blows my mind. Like, if you combine everything you've just said about the law and the judge, and then you put some lie detector tests in there that actually work, right? I mean, you'd have
Yeah.
to do some tests. They'd have to be like, I don't know, say a 15-minute or however many minutes or hours to test that person to make sure that you're actually getting the right brainwaves, because everybody's totally different, right? Is what I was
Yeah.
learning. And but actually, if you combine those, you probably wouldn't even need a judge. But then it's like, well, okay, so we don't need a judge, but then we don't need lawyers. Then we don't like. Then it's like we
Don't
don't
need a
need any.
jury.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah. You don't need anyone. It's bonkers.
Robocop.
Well,
Robocop, right? He arrests and administers justice immediately. Or Minority Report. So I've got this business in Bristol called Ultraleap, right? And fantastic business. It's got incredible hand tracking, which it uses to create the as part of its main product, which is the creation of sensation of touch in midair.
mm-hmm,
So it's midair haptics, right?
mm-hmm,
So if there's a button over there, 5 yards away, I can press the button here. My finger will move here. I'll feel it here, but the button will be over there.
mm-hmm.
So, we just finished a trial with a large fast food company where you get the screens at the front as you walk in and you order your stuff and you go up and pick them up. Well, during COVID, of course, there was someone standing there wiping these screens every time someone touched them with a disinfectant cloth. So we were able to press the button here and follow the little bubble around and like that. And you'd feel, you do it. You've got feedback, right?
Right.
So you're doing it. But the interesting thing is that, with this hand tracking, we can put these sensations literally in midair, right? So I didn't realize before I worked with this company, but your fingerprint, I thought it was always to help grip, right? As you pick something up, it's kind of ridged, so it's like grip.
Right.
But it's partly to do that. But also, it allows you to work out what you're touching, because when you run your finger across a piece of glass or a piece of wood or a piece of carpet, you know exactly what it is, even with your eyes closed, because of the sensation of the vibration that's creating with the little ridges. Well, we can create that in midair. So you can close your eyes and do this, and which doesn't come out very well on a podcast, I know. But so move your finger down like this with
Right.
your eyes closed, and you can say, oh, that's glass, that's plastic, that's wood. So you can recreate sensations in midair
Wow.
simply by generating the vibration that would have occurred between that surface and your fingers,
Well, that's
right?
amazing for the
So,
future of
so
learning
imagine,
and the future of augmented reality, virtual reality. Like that's totally incredible. Yeah.
yeah, because so what we have at the moment, even with the recent Apple product launch, right, the Vision. So you've got great virtual reality. And when you're sitting, I think if you've got a PlayStation or whatever, and you're sitting there with the headset on, and it's incredible. You
It's
look around, and
amazing.
you really feel in the game until you try and pick something up, and then it jumps in your hand and you don't feel it, and it's like, oh god, it's not real, is it? But imagine if you actually could pick up something and you really felt it in your hand, even though it wasn't there.
It,
Right? And this is what
mhm.
this creates. So it's creating a super loop. between, you're going from reality to completely non-reality, and then bringing it back with all the senses back to reality again. Now, if you come back to the first point that you made about, with no jobs, let's say we don't have any jobs, how do we fulfill our lives? Well, one way of doing it without spending much, because we don't earn it, is living in a virtual world. Now, people will say, oh, that's terrible. Well, if you put a headset on, or if you do whatever the latest version will be at that time in 50, 80 years, 100 years, right? Maybe you just need to close your eyes with a little, eye thingy on at the time. But if you did that then, and you had the most amazing experiences of being on a beach or watching a theater, going to, well, I mean, what do we do with that time? When we're not working, we're earning all this money to do stuff, right? So the stuff that we do, whether it's going on holiday, experiencing a safari, or speedboating, or aquaplaning, or whatever it is, whatever we want to do, it's an experience, right? And technology is about to get to the point where it can trick us, trick our mind. That's basically what it's doing. Trick our mind into truly believing we're having the experience.
Yeah, for anyone that
And my
hasn't,
question is,
but for anyone that hasn't like put a PlayStation headset on, like I haven't got one myself, but like I basically put one on and I went diving. Like I'd never actually done that before. I mean, I had a couple of times I've tried out the Oculus or whatever, but then I went diving and I went into this submarine and literally
mm,
it scared the living daylights out of me, because then the shark came along and then the shark like bit the cage, and like, but it was literally like my friend was just laughing because he was just watching on the screen, right? And it's absolutely crazy. That's how it is. So if anyone's listening to this and you've never kind of done that, like, about, because it's come on so far in the last 5, maybe 8 years, it's insane.
and then the thing, and again, my point being that the thing missing is like when that shark comes up to you and it doesn't hit you and you don't feel it, then you remember that it's just. But if it does hit you, then you've completed the experience. You're effectively in the same environment as you would be, but safely, of course, because it's not a real shark, it wouldn't get you. So you could have all the same experiences at a fraction of the cost with no risk. And does it mean then that people then just say, you know what, all this life malarkey, I'd just be quite happy to have the best experiences. I could get the best partner I wanted. I could have whatever girlfriend or boyfriend I want join me on any holiday. I'll pay for everything, and we'd have the best meals. And maybe by then there'll be some taste replacement, other sensory replacements. And then, how does that come as an ethical question to you then, right? For free, would you be willing to have every single, true experience, deep, amazing experiences for free, as many as you like, just change the program, right? Or would you still rather work 80% of your life to have 2 weeks off a year to have a small experience with all the risks and flight hassle and cancellations and God knows what that it takes to do that?
Well, I think there's a happy medium. From my point of view, there'd be a happy medium in between, right? Because if you think about the way that you can like go and maybe look at the Celestine Chapel and look at all of these amazing pieces of history which you'd never be able to perhaps even fit in your lifetime, right? Like if you imagine you've only got a month per year, right? Like a lot of people have 3 weeks, don't they? 4 weeks, maybe if they're lucky, right? You'd never fit in all of the ancient wonders and all of these wonders of the world, because you just don't have time, and you don't have the resource, right? But if you could go, and you could go to Angkor Wat, and you could go to Machu Picchu, and you could go to, and you could have the insider tours, right? Like, I mean, I'd check out a lot of these things, but I think learning be interesting. Like if you could apply this to like learning jiu-jitsu, right? Like learning Brazilian jiu-jitsu with a robot coach, right? I wonder how that would actually play out in, if then you went back to class and you tried to roll around, like you'd probably just get choked.
Yeah, look, but again, this is, so we have this sensation of touch, right? But we don't have, fully immersed, like, you couldn't have an experience of getting punched and beaten up in the street or anything like that.
Not yet.
You
Not
go, I
yet,
suppose
right?
weird. Like that guy, like the judge in Billions, some sort of masochist that says, I like to be beaten up every night. But if you haven't seen Billions, I've probably spoiler alert. But so the thing is, there'll be experiences that someone always wants the real thing, but and none of this is binary because nothing happens in a binary fashion, right? Nothing. That's why we're talking about driverless cars for a decade, and then we have them, but you can't use them because regulation is stopping us, and blah 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 blah. But over time, it's going one way, and technology is like toothpaste, right? Once you squeeze the tube, it ain't going back in.
Right.
So when people know that technology exists, we can't pretend it doesn't. We can't just say, regulation can't just say, haha, no, sorry guys, false alarm, there's no AI, there's no virtual reality, it doesn't really look as good as that. Yeah, it's all, just walk away. No. So once it's there, the single most, single biggest desire of the people that put it there is to make more there and to make it better and to do some stuff to monetize it as well. So, we're not going to go backwards in technology. And the other thing about it, right, is whenever we start to make things efficient, whether that's through improving well-being wise, improving a situation, improving a technology, improving the way we engage with it, that efficiency, that improvement drives more consumption as well, right? So back in the old days, during the Industrial Revolution, in the early days of steam engines, there were lots of people dying in the coal mines because coal mines were a dangerous place, and there was collapses and everything else. So the great and the good, the Stevensons and the Brunels and all these people got together and they said, what we need is to create, collective minds need to create the most efficient steam engine ever produced, and that way we'll use less coal. Well, that didn't work out, did it? Because the more efficient you make the steam engine, the more populous the steam engine is, and the cheaper and the more widely available it becomes, therefore infinitely more coal is consumed. And that's a thing called Jevons paradox. One of the guys was Jevon, and his paradox was efficiency begets consumption.
Wow.
Right, and that's why it doesn't matter how small, how micro computers are, how more efficient by putting things on the cloud rather than running on a server under your desk. All these things still means we need more and more and more and more and more megawatts to service everything we do. If I don't know what phone you've got, Nat, but you've probably got iPhone 13, 14, something like that, right? Well, in reality, it doesn't do a whole bunch more than the 10 or the 9 or the 8 or the 8 or the 7, other than better quality camera, better this, better that, bigger memory, all that sort of stuff. Same price. But we're getting so much more for it. But now we expect so much more for it. Right? So all of this incremental value hasn't come cheaper. It's stayed the same price or maybe even a little bit more, but we're getting so much more for it. I remember when I was an apprentice a million years ago, over 40 years ago, I used to sell these hard disks, right? And they were hard disks, they were like a house brick or half a house brick, about that big. And each one of those was a 10 megabyte hard disk.
Wow.
Right? That would carry one picture from your iPhone 14. One picture from your iPhone 14 and would cost you £2,000
Wow.
for 10 megabits, 10 megabits,
Crazy.
10 megabytes, 10 megabytes. And now, the terabytes we have on our phone is the equivalent of thousands of those, a house full of house bricks worth
Wow.
in a phone.
That's crazy. I'm blown away by the world and the way technology's moving forwards. But I'm quite excited as well. I mean, I'm excited about the new AI, the new move to create chips within Europe in the next however many years. Like by 2030, they want to have, I think, they want to have 20% of the chip manufacturing right in Europe. I'm pretty sure it's chips, isn't it?
So there's a company called Cypearl based out of Paris that is developing kind of supercomputer chips, and I think that's the area in particular they're very sensitive on is the the supercomputer end, the quantum end, right? Because, creating chips, yes, okay, you've got ARM, which, British company, now listing in the States.
Mm-hmm.
Is it still a British company? Well, it's going to be owned by shareholders all over the world anyway, and it would have been if it was listed in the UK. There's no real
Right.
difference.
Right.
But we live in a global environment, so I find this, the protectionism of saying, "Oh, we must only produce in Europe when we can only use European chips." Yeah, this is a fear that the likes of China producing a lot of chips will somehow plant something in those chips to when they're used and deployed
Right.
around the world, it will gain some benefit. Now, it's not inconceivable that happened, that could happen. And I guess the challenge being that if you really want to stop that, you've got to kind of either change the behavior of the Chinese, or you've got to find and develop solutions that find and make sure that that doesn't happen. Just building another load that is only used in Europe, I mean, for certain applications, as I say, for the quantum stuff, which is what they're trying to really get the sort of the deep learning, the deep analysis stuff with, there's an argument for it, but because it's just easier to do that than to change the will of the Chinese, I guess. But I think ultimately, again, it's people that screw this up. It's not the chips. It's not, it's the people's intentions when they do this. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's another one for the politicians.
I mean, we've spoken about this before, haven't we? And at the end of the day, I speak about this all the time with top security experts, right? It's like, if people want to get into your devices, they're going to get into your devices anyway, aren't they? If they want to check and read your stuff, they can do whatever they want anyway if they know what they're doing. That's correct, isn't it?
I mean, look, so I know, I had this chap had it to him, and we witnessed it the second time. But basically, in Bond Street Tube Station in London, there was this guy with one of these, with the buskers have these devices now that people say, "I haven't got any change," when they ask for when they're playing an instrument.
Oh,
"Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry, got no change." So you can tap. Don't worry, you can tap, right?
Oh, nice.
And yeah, so they're getting quite cool with the thing, and I think it's quite fun because I don't normally carry cash to give them, and sometimes I would like to give them. So having a tap device is great. So what's happened is, of course, that these guys are walking around, not necessarily buskers, but individuals are walking around the sort of the Pretz and the various shops within the tube station with one of these devices, and as they see people with a wallet in their back pocket, they're just coming up and going dink and
Wow.
putting 25 quid on it,
Wow.
right? £25, dink, touchless, right? And they're picking it up, and at the end of the day, 25 quid, first of all, it's gone, the money's gone instantly. Secondly, even if you went, what on earth was that? 25 quid, is that really something I'm going to go out of my way to find out? Well, maybe not. But the point being that you won't even realize it until you get a statement 2 weeks later.
Yeah. And you don't know what it is. You might
So
have forgotten. Most people have just forgotten, right?
yeah, totally. And it's 25, and so I think there's stuff happening all the time you've got to be aware of, and technology, I say, is just the tool, and I find it incredibly efficient to be able to just tap something and tap out and all that sort of stuff, but it can also be used by naughty people.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
yeah.
chip manufacturer is one thing where you always seem to be treating the symptom and not the cause, right? So if you're trying to build chips because you're scared of Chinese built chips having something bad, then you're treating the symptom, and then someone else, then if you get into that manufacturer, and let's say they employ 5 people with unscrupulous morals, then it's defeated, isn't it? The objective of trying to be healthier. I think we've got to focus more on symptom than cause with tech.
Yeah, it's a crazy place. I mean, there was a lady who worked for the BBC.
Cause rather
Did you? What's that, Mike? Sorry.
No, I said it the wrong way around. I've got to focus more on the cause rather than the symptom. I just realized I said it the wrong way around.
Well, I think the way that people need to safeguard themselves. I mean, there are wallets, aren't there, that you can get which protect your cards within the wallet, right?
Absolutely.
Or you can use your
Yeah.
watch to swipe, or your phone or whatever. But it's like, as we get better at protecting our assets, so to speak, then the criminals get better at basically targeting people. But
Well, I don't know about you, but I have a Faraday pouch for my car key, right? So, normally when people come in, they drop their car key at the front door, and then criminals go around with their device reading the car keys because they're very close to the front
oh
door.
wow,
They read them and they can open the car and drive away, right?
wow,
This is happening all the time. So, as well as leaving my car keys at the other side of the house, I also have a little Faraday pouch. It's a little pouch which is a bit like these wallets that are protective,
right,
but you drop your keys in there, they can't be read,
wow,
right? So then thieves are then going, okay, well, they'll sit outside a posh, and this happened to a friend of mine, sit outside a posh restaurant in London, let's say Scott's on Mount Street, and they'll just sit outside and wait for a nice car to pull up, watch where they go,
yeah.
and they go into Scott's, and they walk up with their device. And now, of course, because I never take my Faraday pouch out with me,
Oh
right?
no,
When I drive, I take it out the Faraday
yeah,
pouch and drive with it, and it's
wow,
in my pocket. But then they sit outside the restaurant, having watched you go in, and then they can monitor there and get in the car and drive away.
wow,
And sometimes they're not even driving away. They're just opening the trunk, taking whatever's in there, close it, and you won't even know until you go and get whatever you're supposed to be in there.
wow,
And it's absolutely rife. And it's the same point of, as soon as you provide a technology that stops it, it's like in the old days where you had these speed cameras, and then they gave you this speed camera detector.
oh
And
yeah,
then there was a different type of speed camera. And then you had to have a different type of speed camera detector. And it's always kind of like this, one step forward, one step back thing. But technology is like that. For everything you invent, there's going to be someone to, try and find a malicious application.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to your new book, and how to thrive in this uncertain, ever changing world, right? Um, you obviously, you talk about being honest with people. I'm nearly halfway through. I had hoped to have read it by the time I spoke to you, but a few things came up and stuff. But for business people, right, and the way that technology is kind of moving right now, would you say that people should just stop panicking and just start actually doing some research and talking to people and listening to podcasts, and actually thinking about what's going on without just reacting blindly to these changes? Or what would you
Yeah, I
say?
mean that's good advice for anything in life, right? Not jumping to conclusions without doing a little bit of thinking about it. But I think we're in this world where people are probably feeling quite beaten up, right? There's been COVID, which has changed our world quite significantly for all sorts of reasons. But then there's the cost of living crisis. There's Ukraine war on Europe's doorstep. There's inflation rates going up through the roof, and people questioning whether they can afford their mortgages. There's and jobs and unemployment, and all this sort of stuff is happening around us. It kind of it's never not been there, but it's always been sporadically, in our life, and never this massive buildup of what the book's called a perfect storm. And so, you know, people are feeling overwhelmed, and the book is all about kind of breaking it down into sort of bite-sized chunks, and trying to understand, okay, what are you really concerned about here, and this is how you should think about dealing with it. And there are apps to help you with that particular thing. Technology can help in all cases, right? There's so much tech. There's more tech out there than we can than our imagination can stretch to, right? So there's plenty of answers with different apps and all these different things. But the most important thing, I think, for people that are challenged right now, kind of like in a funk, if you like, is to just take a step back and say, all right, how do Desmond Tutu, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So you break it all down into bite-sized pieces, and you start dealing with things. No head in the sand, no kind of, oh, if I pretend it's not happening, it will go away. Engage with people, talk to people. It's amazing how when, especially on a financial thing, with debt and things like that, having conversations with people, restructuring the debt, getting it back under control, all those things are actually a lot easier than people think they will be. And then there's the pride thing. Oh, I can't possibly ask for that because, I've never asked for anything in my life types, that sort of attitude. Well, that's fine, but we've just gone through exceptional circumstances, and then have conversations with people because they come up with ideas. And if you have ideas, this everything in life, every object in life, when you look at it from two different sides, you will see two different objects. So having other people look at your situation will come up with different ideas on how to resolve it. So, I think that, it's just a little bit of non-prescriptive advice on how to think about getting yourself out of a mental sort of whirlpool.
I think it's a I think it's a big challenge for a lot of people. But I like the way that I think the second chapter or the third one you talk about this breaking it up into these bite-sized chunks, because if we overload ourselves with all this stuff, it's like in jiu-jitsu, right? Like if you're lying on the mats and you've got someone that's just smashing you, and you can't breathe, like your breath is completely got, you can't breathe at all, and you can feel them like they're just about to put an armbar on you, right? But then they've also got another part of your body which could be a danger, but you know that armbar is going to happen, but you're not worried about the breath because you're thinking about the armbar. So I think it's thinking about the specific thing that's right in front of you, that if you get out of
Yeah.
it, because then you can free yourself, can't you? And then you can move forwards with whatever it is that is the real problem, right? Because there's always like another problem and another problem, and it's just taking it one by one, isn't it? One step at a time, right? Um,
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest challenges we have as human beings is we're driven by fear or greed, right? And in these times, we're driven by fear. And so, and fear for me is a kind of, and I talk about this in a few of my books. So the fear is a useless emotion because we never fear the past, we never fear the present. In reality, we fear the future. We fear what's going to happen to us as a result of what's happening now, right? And so, it's almost like first of all, we usually overestimate the whatever we're afraid of. It's rarely as bad as we think it will be. The second thing is, you know, you either have something you can do about it, or there is nothing to do about it. Either way, fearing an outcome and not doing anything about it does not help. It's simply imagine what you could do to make that likelihood smaller, in which case then you do it. And if there's nothing you can do, then what the hell anyway? There's no, it's going to happen, like death is going to
yeah.
happen eventually, right? So, so then having that kind of liberation. Fear is like paying interest on a debt you haven't drawn yet, right? It's like you come up with a mortgage and you decided not to buy the house, but you're still paying the interest. Yeah, it's complete nonsense. So deal with what you can deal with, and the other stuff that is impossible to deal with, don't worry about it. Don't fear it. Just accept that it's an outcome, but don't be too easy to accept it's an outcome until you've explored all optionality about things to mitigate or remove that thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, someone said false evidence appearing real. Someone said that. I forget who the hell it was, but someone said that, and it's totally true. Like you've said this to me a number of
Yeah,
times in the last 8 years. I've been interviewing you for 8 years, right? And maybe six. It's definitely more. Definitely six, or maybe
it's a
yeah.
lot.
It's a long
It's a lot.
time, right? And you've said that this.
Long enough for you to remember how many books
Yeah,
I've had,
well,
though,
all right.
man.
I'm sorry about that. I've definitely read two of them. I've definitely read two of them. I listened to one, so maybe that was the one. Maybe that was the one.
There you go.
Yeah, it could be. But literally, when it comes when it comes to adapting to disruption, right? What apart from what we've just said, what's it like? How do you adapt to it, right? You just need to like just realize it's going to be over quick, so don't panic. Just try and do your best, and keep your eyes peeled, and if you can't handle it, talk to someone that can help you, right? Like that's basically the message.
Definitely talk to people because, again, A, their experiences will be different to yours. B, the way they see the problem will be different to yours. They may have a solution that you haven't exhausted. But on my first book, that Forget Strategy, Get Results, I talk about the fear of when I had two businesses that I was crashing together, that were competing businesses. So they hated each other's guts, and I was bringing them together. So my management team was fearful of redundancies, because they think, well, synergy is, two people, one job type thing, right? And so I took them up to up to Scotland, and there's a huge aquarium just on the north side of the Firth of Forth, the old bridge. And when we went there, they didn't know what they were doing, and literally, it's huge. It's probably, I don't know, 25 meters deep, and you think you're in the open water. And so I said, right, go and get your wetsuits on. And they were like, what? Sorry. And two by two, I said, okay, get in. So as they were getting in the water, they could see these shark fins coming up towards them. And there were no nets, no cages, no nothing. And in they went, right? And I got people swearing at me and goodness knows what, where's HR? I hate you, this sort of stuff. And then when they came out, having been on the seabed effectively with these sharks literally 8 inches from their face, I said, well, how did you feel? And I said, when we thought about what was about to happen, we panicked, we were scared less, and and they were just terrified, and they hated me, and they couldn't believe they were, and then I said, how did you feel when you were in the water and these sharks were there? Well, they said, well, I was still terrified, but it was kind of exciting in a way. I was actually doing something that I thought, oh my God, this is like, and I said, how did you feel when you came out? And they went, oh, amazing. I don't want to do it again, but like once in a lifetime, I can tell my kids. And so I said, well, okay, well, every time you have an impending situation that is causing this fear, this anxious, this worry in you, right? Imagine that process. First of all, it's almost always less painful, less dangerous, less bad than you're laying in front of you. You're slapping on yourself. During it, you're probably learning a lot. You're probably experiencing things. You're probably gonna have, you're going to take yourselves to different levels, different limits. And when you come out of it, you'll have amazing experiences, and you'll be a completely different person as a result of it. So using that kind of dynamic, and Churchill said, when you're going through hell, don't stop. It's like, no point stopping when you're going through it. That's the worst place to stop. You've got to get through the other side. So it's like, make sure that you have this vision of the other side of whatever it is your fear is, right? And then know that is a window in time that will enrich you.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what I think about
Absolutely. It's taking that positive, isn't it? And not being frightened to take action, right? Because generally you know what you need to do, and something's stopping you from doing it. And it could be just you've decided to handle things in a certain way, or you've got a defense mechanism. Maybe you drink, maybe you delay doing things because you exercise, and that puts you in a better frame of mind, so you don't actually tackle the problem. But you just got to get stuck into it, right? You just got to just get on with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And make appointments in your own diary with yourself if it comes to that, right? And just say, and the same way as we work differently with our home life as to our office life. And why would we do that? Because they're all stakeholders they're all reliant on us to do things, whether that's your kids or whether it's your colleagues or whatever. And yet, we get upset with the kids when they make a noise, oh, for God's sake, like that. You'd never do that at work, right? And certainly you wouldn't do it and survive, that's for sure. So, but why do we act in different ways? We should be engaging with people and going like, oh, that's interesting. Why are you doing that? And how can I help? And my door's always open type thing. Yeah. And then we get home and we think, oh, I've had a hard day at the office. I don't want to talk to anyone. Please don't talk to me. Let me go and have a drink. And, well, you can do that, right? But remember, there are stakeholders in all parts of your life that are dependent on us for their elements, right? And if we were at the office and someone was coming in and we said, hey, can I have a minute? And they go, oh God, not now. I don't want to talk to you. We go like, well, you're out of here.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing to our colleagues at home sometimes, and we need to remember that we're part of a wheel, and we have codependence on people, and they have codependence on us. So getting started with something, reaching out to people, you know, they may be seeing the negative side of you because you're stressed and worried and upset about something, and they may hold the answer to the problem if you spoke to them about it.
Yeah,
So not only
absolutely.
you're not getting their benefit, but actually you're pissing them off at the same time.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Mike. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. I really thoroughly enjoy it, and people really get a lot of value from your wisdom. And I will drop links to your book and all that sort of good stuff. We're just about to revisit.
Was that all
Oh,
four of them?
yeah, I know the four.
Was that all four of them?
Maybe I have. I've definitely explored two and a bit. Which one am I missing? I don't know which one I'm missing.
Well, you'll have to go and have a look at your
I'm going
bookshelf.
to have a look in my Audible, because I like the fact that you do the Audibles yourself, and I think that's brilliant to actually do that. I respect that a lot. I think it's good, and you get to tell the stories, because there's so many stories in your books, and you know, all with massive value, right? And that's what's interesting. Yeah, really, really interesting.
Kind enough for you to say.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone for listening, and go and check out the other interviews that Mike and I have done. And, you know, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Subscribe to this channel. Thanks.